secondary movement, and mixed migration. Refugees often do not stay in the first country they reach after fleeing conflict, persecution, or disaster. Their search for safety is often part of a larger journey that may lead them to another country in search of better protection, more opportunities, improved living conditions, or family reunification. This process, known as secondary movement, represents a key challenge for both refugees and the countries involved in hosting them. Secondary movement occurs when individuals who initially flee to one country decide to move onwards, usually due to a combination of factors. They may be seeking more robust protection systems, economic opportunities such as employment or education, or better living conditions. In some cases, they may also be attempting to reunite with family members who are already in another country. Refugees who experience secondary movement often face significant legal and bureaucratic obstacles, as international asylum policies typically stipulate that refugees must apply for asylum in the first country they enter. However, this rule has limitations, and many refugees seek to bypass it by moving to countries that are seen as offering better chances for a safer and more prosperous future. A major route for secondary movement is across the Mediterranean Sea, which has become one of the most dangerous migration routes in the world. Thousands of refugees attempt the perilous journey each year, risking their lives in overcrowded, unseaworthy boats. Human traffickers exploit the desperation of refugees, offering false promises of safety and employment in Europe in exchange for large sums of money. The risks of crossing the Mediterranean are compounded by insufficient safety regulations, overcrowded conditions, and a lack of resources to assist those in need. Despite international efforts to monitor and respond to the crisis, the Mediterranean remains a deadly passage for thousands of people trying to reach Europe, particularly Italy, Greece, and Spain. Even when refugees survive these treacherous crossings, many are often stopped at borders, detained, or deported. Countries along the Mediterranean route, such as Italy and Greece, have implemented stringent border controls and detention policies in response to the large numbers of refugees arriving. In some cases, refugees face pushbacks, an illegal practice in which border security forces forcibly return individuals to unsafe conditions without allowing them to apply for asylum. This practice is particularly evident at the borders of countries like Greece, where security forces have been documented forcibly returning refugees and migrants to Turkey, violating international law and the fundamental right to seek asylum. The experience of secondary movement is not limited to Europe. Refugees in Africa, for example, often move onward in search of better protection or opportunities. Refugees from Somalia or South Sudan living in Kenya's Dadaab refugee camp have been known to continue their journeys toward Europe, the United States, or South Africa. They leave in search of better economic prospects or safety, as the camps where they are initially settled often lack long-term solutions and are plagued by insecurity and insufficient resources. Secondary movement is a global phenomenon, and it is not only motivated by the desire for better living conditions. Many refugees continue moving because they face barriers to permanent integration in the first country of asylum. These include a lack of legal rights, limited access to education and employment, and social exclusion. In some cases, refugees fleeing conflict or persecution in one country face continued persecution upon reaching another, leading them to seek alternative destinations. The process of secondary movement places immense pressure on receiving countries, particularly in Europe. Nations such as Germany and Sweden have long been favoured by refugees as destinations for secondary movement due to their relatively stronger protection systems, better economic opportunities, and higher quality of life. Asylum seekers arriving in countries like Greece or Italy often attempt to travel onwards to these countries, hoping to avoid overcrowded camps and the restrictive conditions imposed by frontline states. However, this movement can result in a range of challenges, from overcrowded reception centres to significant strain on social services and political tensions surrounding migration policies. In both Europe and Africa, secondary movement is often compounded by mixed migration flows, where refugees, migrants, and asylum seekers travel together, sometimes with very different motivations. Mixed migration refers to the phenomenon where people of different legal statuses, refugees, economic migrants, and other displaced individuals, travel along the same routes, often leading to confusion and challenges for border authorities and humanitarian organizations. For example, refugees fleeing conflict may travel alongside migrants seeking better job opportunities, leading to overlapping needs and demands that may complicate the delivery of aid and protection. This mixed movement is particularly evident at Europe's southern borders, where people from various parts of the world, including Syria, Afghanistan, Africa, and South Asia, attempt to enter Europe. While some are fleeing persecution and conflict, others are seeking better economic prospects. The difficulty in distinguishing between the two groups further complicates border enforcement and the delivery of aid. In response, European countries have tightened their border controls and introduced increasingly stringent asylum policies, such as those proposed in the Dublin Regulation, which requires asylum seekers to remain in the first EU country they enter.